And so I
Hmm.
try to, I literally do a talk that's called the toxicity of hustle culture. I say
Nice.
hustle, hustle culture is great to get, I said, hustle culture is great to get started. Hustle culture is what made you believe in you when no one else was going to believe in you. But at some point, you need to stop playing checkers and you need to start playing chess. And so I think that is part of the that's part of it.
Welcome to the Sharpen the Spear podcast, where we help home service pros cut through the noise, sharpen their business tools, and reclaim the profit, freedom, and impact they've been missing. I'm your host, Richard Walsh, Profit Freedom Coach, and I'm here to help you stop grinding and start growing. Let's sharpen the spear. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with, yes, you guessed it again, another incredible guest. I've got Elaine Rasmussen with us. And Elaine, nobody knows Elaine better than Elaine. So, Elaine, give us that backstory, bring us up to speed, and we're going to get into a great conversation.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. This is really great. So exciting to be with you. So, yeah, the story of Elaine goes back a really long time, actually. I like to tell my kids I have more years behind me than I have in front of me, but it's so every moment is precious. And when I say that I don't have time, I literally don't have time. But I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I now fast forward live in the Twin Cities, but it's been a long and winding road. I actually started off as a performance artist. I was a classically trained dancer and did that for about 20 years, but knew that I didn't want to do that for a living and kind of did a hard right and got into finance. I became a stock analyst while I was in college and really felt like I wasn't going to really have the emotional fortitude. This was also in the 80s.
Mm.
Finance was such a different beast in the 80s,
Yep.
but left that to make another hard right and pursued a career in marketing communications. So worked for some of the major studios like DreamWorks Studios and Warner Brothers. And after I got out of the rat race of working in the entertainment industry, did marketing and communications for a variety of different industries. I worked in manufacturing, I worked in publishing, I worked for universities. So I really feel like I never really understood my life and because I kept having all these weird jobs and almost every job that I had, it was a new position. So I literally had to create my job at almost every place that I went. And so it wasn't until maybe 15 or 20 years into my career when people would ask me, well, what's the through thread in your resume? And I finally am like, I've created every position that I've had to work in. So I'm really good with making something out of nothing and creating order where there isn't any. But along the way, I've been what's been called or been labeled an accidental entrepreneur. And it wasn't until 2017, after I left an organization after being there for almost 8 years, that I actually decided to be an entrepreneur on purpose. I actually decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I founded a company in 2017 called Social Impact Now, which is a social finance and impact investing studio. And we design and help organizations or governments to actually structure community-based finance opportunities, right, that are really reflective of the community that they're in, give back to the community that they're in, or power the economy from the community up, as opposed to big, large corporations down. But as part of that, I realized 2 years into my journey as an entrepreneur, while I had grown other people's businesses, I didn't know how to grow my business because there's no IT department, there's no HR department. There, I was like, oh crap, I don't know how to grow my own business. And so I went on this journey to really kind of figure that out and realized that at least here, I'm based in Minnesota, that in Minnesota, our ecosystem was kind of built like a baseball game. They were really good at getting you from home base to first, right? If you were a new entrepreneur and you were just starting out and you had zero background and zero information, they were really great at getting you to first base. And what was also really great about our entrepreneur ecosystem is that they were really great if you were already on third. So, maybe you're already reaching 6 figures of sales and now you need $300,000 of capital to get you to that next level, or $500,000 or even $1 million. But everything in between was missing. And so, from a marketing person, I'm a strategist by nature. I realized, like, after going around and not finding the help that I needed, I said, well, who can help me? Other entrepreneurs. So I literally just started hosting conversations with entrepreneurs. And the whole point was, let's put all of our problems on the table. Somebody around this table can probably help us figure this out. And then from there, it was so successful. But then everybody started talking about capital and not having a problem, an issue with raising capital. And so I was like, oh, well, I just come from working in philanthropy where there was lots of money, like people didn't know what to do with the money that they had. So I'm like, okay, there's plenty of money. So what's really the problem? So I said, you know what? I'm going to start convening investors. And I started to have hosting conversations with investors, and I started asking them, what do you invest in? Why do you invest in that? Why aren't you investing locally in your community? You know, if I could provide you an opportunity to invest locally, would you do it? And so from there, that led to more conversations. And I walked into my office in 2018 and I told my staff, okay, there's a huge problem. People who want to like make it really great investments into their community don't necessarily have the relationships or a vehicle to do that. And the people, these entrepreneurs who are small businesses that want to get to a $1 million, $10 million revenue, don't have the connections or the resources. So we need to bring these people together. So we're going to put on a conference. And my team said, you're nuts. And I said, yes, I know that I'm crazy, but we're still going to do this conference. And then from there, we in 2018, we put together the first Connect Up Summit, which was really to bring together the ecosystem, the entrepreneurs, the investors, as well as the organizations that support them. And I'm still doing that while I'm running a whole business, but it's a really way for me to stay connected to the entrepreneur ecosystem. It's a really great way to lift up the stories of some of our small businesses. And it's just been, we're a certified, Social Impact Now is a certified B Corp. So we have just kept supporting this organization that we launched called Connect Up Institute, which is really about supporting small businesses across the state of Minnesota to help them grow and scale.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Because, you know, I totally get the home to first base, third base to home. That gap in between is a big one, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is only like 4% of all small businesses reach the 7-figure mark.
Right.
And make more than $1 million a year. Like that's quite a first goal.
Right.
When you think about it, 32 million small businesses, only 4% of those are making it 7 figures. You know, a lot of guys are hovering at that 500, 700, which is a really difficult place to start getting capital.
Right.
And sometimes I think maybe obviously what you probably discovered is sometimes, like, I have this thing. So I remember reading in the Harvard Business Review, it's like, well, the number one reason businesses fail is, you know, they're undercapitalized. Now, I'll make one argument against that, because I like to tell Harvard they're wrong. That's just who I am.
Oh, it's always fun.
I said, no, they fail because they don't sell enough product at a high enough price.
Well, and I
Right?
would say that they fail. So I think that's part of it, absolutely. But I also think that they fail for a couple of other reasons. And I talk about this a lot. So one is the romanticizing of hustle culture, right?
Mhm.
And they almost like, it's almost like a bad thing to move from what I like to call from hustle mode to CEO mode. And it's because it's a fear. No one's taught you those things. They'll say, you know, you're a postal worker. You have a great idea. You turn from postal worker into an entrepreneur, right? There's not necessarily, you haven't necessarily had that exposure to necessarily an executive suite of, because there's a different kind of strategic thinking that happens at an executive level, right? And we don't teach that in so much of our culture, particularly pop culture, especially when you think about music. It's very grounded in this hustle culture. And so I try to, I literally do a talk that's called the toxicity of hustle culture. I say
Nice.
hustle culture is great to get, I said, hustle culture is great to get started. Hustle culture is what made you believe in you when no one else was going to believe in you. But at some point, you need to stop playing checkers and you need to start playing chess. And so I think that is part of that's part of it. I think the other thing that I talk about is they don't ask for the sales. So I'll give you an example. I had a young lady who she's been a pastry chef. She's a pastry chef. Every time I have an event, I've called her. We do about 3 or 4 events a year. We're spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year. And she recently came through one of my accelerators. And I told her at the end of the accelerator, I said, I don't know if you realize this, but in the 5 years we've been doing business, you've never asked me for my business. I've given you my business, but you've never asked me for my business. I do an event every year You've never once said to me at the end of the event, okay, Elaine, when's the next event? I want to get you on my calendar, right? That's asking for the sale when you already have the sale, right? I said, so either one, you don't think that it's important to ask me for my business, or you take it for granted that you're going to get my business. I said, and neither one of those is actually good. So I think in addition to what you're saying, I think these other two things are some of the things that I talk about. And then just avoiding the numbers. That's the last thing that I find is
Oh
the
yeah.
downfall.
Oh
Is
yeah.
they're like, I'm not good with numbers. I'm not good with math. I'm just going to put it aside. I'm never going to look at it. Right. And it's like, no, the numbers are power. Like there's so much power in knowing. Now, no one's asking. I think the thing that they get bogged down with is people are trying to make them have MBAs or
Right.
people are trying to make them accountants. I said, listen, you're not here to be an accountant. There are people for that. I said, you need to know enough to know whether somebody's stealing from you, and you need to know whether to fire somebody. That's the amount of accounting you need to know.
Yeah. Elaine, we are so aligned in all this thinking because I'm with you on all points. I mean, literally, you're right. And it's the problem is these guys, people get in business because they can do something. They're a pastry chef, they're a plumber, they're
Right?
whatever they are, and they start the business. And you got your hustle culture. I call it ignorance on fire.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I
they're
love
just
that.
they know what they're doing, but man, they're going. Okay, they're going, and I love it. And there's no secret sauce not to do that the first 2 years.
Right.
But I always tell people the problem is next thing you know, it's 10 years and you've repeated the first two times. And
Yes.
that's what I've dubbed as the owner prison.
Yes.
You know,
I
it's
love
you,
that.
you have to unlock the door every day, blah, 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 right? So they know their thing, but they don't know business overall
Right.
because like you said, it isn't taught pretty much at any level. I interviewed an MBA of a VP of operations for a company with an MBA. They knew nothing about business. Nothing. I'm going and I'm like trying to get through the interview and I'm just being straight up. I never published that interview. I'm like, you don't know anything about business.
No, no. I
You
and
know,
and I
you got these credentials. You had
yes.
these, you know, what are they with the little three letters and all that? But I'm like, you've never run a business. So I think, and I'll just finish this thought real quick. MBA is great if you've built and run a business, but it by itself, when you haven't done the entrepreneurial aspect, that's okay. Go to a Fortune 500 and go administer things, right?
Absolutely. And I hate to, I'm going to be a little hyperbolic here. I used to be a university recruiter, and I used to say, when students would come to me and say, okay, I'm thinking about getting an MBA, I say, don't do that. I said, don't do that. I said, what is it that you're interested in learning? And they might say finance, they might say economics, they might say marketing. I said, go get a master's in that. I said, the thing about an MBA is you take two finance classes, you take two ops classes, you might take a marketing class, you might take an HR class, and then you take two electives. I said, you learn enough to be actually dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I go, if you're really interested in marketing, go get a master's in marketing. If you're really interested in finance, go get a master's in finance, because now you're going to really know that thing. And to your point, I have found that's been my experience. I have really had to um, on teach MBAs who either come into my office and work for me or they've gone on the entrepreneurship journey. I'm like, everything that they taught you is only works in books. I said, when you have to
Mm-hmm.
turn the lights on, when you've got to write an SOP, when you've got to fire somebody, your MBA doesn't tell you how to fire somebody legally, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's so true, and it's just, and I can tell we're just so aligned, and it's great to hear that from someone who's actually been in that position, and it's awesome that you actually had the wisdom to recommend them to do something that would benefit them, and not just check the box. Yeah, yeah, great, MBA will be cool, you know. But you just that specialization is important. I tell my kids, like, I'd love them all to be entrepreneurs. Don't care if they don't. I want them to do whatever they want to do. But I said, from the college standpoint, I'm like, well, if you're going to be in business, I want you to use the community college to take individual classes that are going to help you understand accounting. You're not going to be an accountant. Okay. If you're an entrepreneur, that's not your thing. But like you said, know enough to when someone's cheating you,
Right.
know how to fill out a spreadsheet. Okay. Some basic skills, right? Marketing, same thing. Know enough to like when someone's pitching you a marketing, deal, like, yeah, I don't think so. That I've heard these, I've seen these smoke and mirrors before, and they don't produce. So that's my thing is get leveled up to a point where you can intelligently converse with someone and then make a quality decision. That's the challenge, and you'll save a ton of money. Stay out of how do you
Exactly.
do that?
But also to your point about getting yourself educated, what I like to tell young people, especially if they're not going to become an entrepreneur, and like everybody's not built for this life, first of all,
Right.
and there are many people who are doing it who shouldn't be doing it, but we also are losing entrepreneurship. We're losing people who are coming with the entrepreneur mindset within a company. But I also think it's a double-edged sword that companies aren't appreciating entrepreneurs in their companies, right? And what I tell my staff is, listen, I want you to continuously pitch me ideas and don't think that because I only take 10% of your ideas that I think they're bad. I have to keep an eye on a higher level of operations. So it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just means it's not a good idea right now. But I'm always trying to drive my staff to bring ideas and solutions. I said, just because I sit in this chair doesn't mean that I have all the best ideas and
Right.
doesn't mean that I know the best, right? Everybody has experience. You have experience that I don't necessarily have that can inform. This is a very important decision because my job as a CEO, I have two jobs. My job is to make sure everybody gets paid and to not have anybody quit. Like those are like every
Right.
decision that I make actually goes back to number one or number two.
Right. Right. You know what's interesting about that too is you have to think of it like those giving you the ideas, giving them the freedom and the permission to do that. I go, that's like if you don't do that, that's like turning down money.
Right.
It's like saying, I don't want money. I'm good,
Exactly.
right? Because that idea, and again, you can always have good and bad. I've wasted plenty of money. Okay, so it's not to hear an idea. If it resonates, you can run with it. That could be a huge increase to your bottom line. You know,
100%,
yeah. So we,
100%.
yeah,
Or cost savings, right? Which is money to the bottom line. If you can figure out
exactly.
if how to shortcut, listen, I am the queen of like a hack. Like, let's hack this. Let's
Yep.
make it an SOP. Let's make it repeatable, right? And going back to your point about spreadsheets, I love a spreadsheet. And people think that like I love math. I said, no, I don't even really like math. I said, but I'll tell you this, man, I love what a spreadsheet can tell me and how quickly it can give me information, and I can do scenario planning with a spreadsheet. It's such a powerful, underutilized tool. I think just even in life, whether you're in business or not, spreadsheets. My son, I finally, after years and years and years, now he's a spreadsheet king. He's like, yeah, mom, I'm calculating my weight. He's like, I'm trying to like get myself together. So I've got a spreadsheet going. I was like, oh, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, it's awesome. It really is important because you said this earlier. It's tracking numbers. Everything has to be measurable. You cannot improve what you don't measure.
Right.
That is like a universal law. Okay, you can everyone. I talk to entrepreneurs a lot. Now I'll talk to them about sales. Like, well, what's your close rate? Oh, I'm like 90%. I go 90%. You close 9 out of 10. I said, well, if that's the case, you need to work for me.
Right.
Okay, because I'm like, that's unbelievable. Now I need a real number. And then even people say, it's a 30 or 40%. I go, see, that's not the number I'm looking for. The number I'm looking for, well, is 27.2%. And my sales cycle takes,
Right.
17 and a half days on
Right.
average. I go, these are numbers I want because that means you're actually tracking them. When you're
Right.
throwing a between number and an average and you're just pulling this out of the sky, which I'm not beating them up. I'm just saying, like, I want it to be 40%. I want it to be 50, but it probably isn't. And it
Right.
has to, unless you do like 3 sales calls a year, I guess you could be at 90. I don't know, but with real numbers, you got to be able to track it and see it. And I resisted that for a while, early on and stuff. And I started like, no, I got this because I got
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I was that
Yeah.
20 year. I was that
Well, that's
20
the
years.
entrepreneur spirit, right? But
Yeah, I was just a complete idiot. But it was just 20 years of that. Finally, I'm like, okay, someone else, I got to do it. But it's really now you look at it, and every client to help, it's numbers. We
yes.
go into we track them, and they don't lie per se. People can make them lie, but
Right.
no themselves in their purest
Right.
form, they don't lie, right? So you can look and say, well, you didn't hit the numbers, right? Well, you can set goals, you can set targets, you can do things. So really, really important. I think those are the things that what's great about it is you can learn that very quickly.
Mhm.
Today, especially, you and I, we started, we'll call it back in the day.
Yes.
Okay. Pre-internet, all that stuff. We built businesses. I built businesses before the internet, all that. And it was way more difficult.
Yes.
You
Yes.
literally have no excuse.
No. No.
Okay.
I tell that to everybody. I say, listen, I've even said that to my kids. I'm like, you no longer have to stay at a job anymore, right? You and I grew up with this mantra of like, you've got to stay for 20 years. I said, if you don't like something, there are too many options now within reason, because I
Mhm.
think that's we've kind of gone the other way of just like, I
Mhm.
have a feeling and I don't want to work today. I'm like,
Right.
okay, like
Yeah.
that's not the solution
Right.
either. But like I tease my team. I'm like, I don't want you to bring your whole self to work. You don't want me to bring my whole self to work. Because if I bring my whole self to work, it's
Right.
going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to bring your whole self to work.
Yeah. I hear you for sure. It is. I mean, the potential to do what you actually like has never been higher.
Yes, that's my point.
You
That
know
is
that,
exactly my
right?
point.
And that's like, but people don't know that. They don't see what's in front of me. They're doom scrolling on Instagram and everything else, but they don't realize if you'll just change the page for an hour, okay, you can find your future. You know, like you can find exactly what you want to do, and yeah, there's maybe iterations as you
Right.
go through it, but you understand where you're going, and no one takes the time. And we all hear now. I kind of make fun of this. Oh, you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. To follow your passion. I'm like, oh, you're going to work.
100.
Okay, you're going to work, but it's not going to feel like work. So people misinterpret what that actually means. It
Yes.
just means like you'll actually love it. You'll get up to go to work because you want to. You know?
It'll wake you up and it'll keep you up, right?
Yep.
But I also think what's happening now is, especially with doom scrolling, is I think people are associating their job and or their business to an Instagram reel. It's like, and then I bring up, Kobe and a lot of the great any great sports, Serena Williams. It's like you see the win, you don't
Right.
see all the hours, to your point of like how many hours of practice, right? How many free throws, how many, right? Like even people say to me like, oh, Elaine, like, I said, do you know that I was a single mom? I've been homeless. I've gone through the darkest of darkest of darkest
Mm-hmm.
of times, and like really dark times. You don't see that part. You see the phoenix rising.
Yeah.
That's not how this works, and it's not all peaches and cream. It's not. There are lots of nights when, as you said, we both made horrible decisions. We made like devastatingly financial decisions. I don't know how many times I've been sued, right? And frivolous lawsuits, but then it's like, oh, well, how much is it going to cost me to fight this frivolous lawsuit? So
Right.
like paying having to make the insurance claim. I'm like, that check, I didn't even have to write that check and I'm pissed. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm exactly. I lose everything in 0809. My home, I got 6 little kids, my wife, and lose my business, lose my home, have to start over. I'll crawl back up for 15 more years, and get back, but then make it. But
Right.
then it only sees you today. I mean, it's that kind of comparison culture.
Right.
Oh, you got this. I go, you. I tell my kids who are all now upper teens and 20s, and I say, listen, if you're following an example, you need to be who I am, not who I was.
Right.
Okay, like I take my wisdom.
Right.
I started late as a parent, but when I'm like, take this wisdom, and then that's your starting point. You're still going to screw up stuff,
Right.
okay, but it's not going to be the really painful screw ups.
Right. And what
The
I
ones
like
that
to say
cost
is
you everything.
when my son says to me or when my kids say to me, I want to be like you, I said, be better,
Yeah,
be
well,
better.
yeah, yeah,
And don't think that because you are maybe starting on second base because of the wisdom that I have to bring, that you're not going to have some misses, you're not going to have some
right,
errors. Like you're still, because you're living in a different time where different mistakes are going to be made, right?
right,
Because I think that's the other thing, particularly with the younger generation. They think that because they can Google it, that they won't make any mistakes. So then when they make a mistake, then they're devastated. It's like, no, you're still going to make mistakes. And I even tell people, I'm like, they'll come to me for expertise. I said, I can give you expertise in this box, right?
mhm,
Because I have not done marketing really in 8 years, like not as a
mhm,
professional. So I can give you some of the technical pieces of marketing, but as far as like I don't know the algorithms of Instagram and Facebook. Like, I don't know, right? I can't tell you. I remember I did a coaching session with a, and we went through this whole process of figuring out her services and figuring out her pricing. And after we were done, it was like a 3-hour process. At the end of it, she says, okay, so is this right? I said, I don't know. Like, I said, the only way we're going to find out if this is right is you're going to go out and offer it. And then
Pressure tested.
right,
Yep.
you're going to pressure test it, and you're going to go get some customers, and you're going to learn something. And that's exactly what happened. She went out, she got some customers. After she'd gone through and delivered the service, she came back and I said, okay, so tell me like what worked and what didn't work. She says she's a brand stylist, and she also does closet cleanings and helping corporate executive women get their closets together. And I said, okay, so what happened? She's like, you know what I realized? I said, what did you realize? She says, I realized I don't want to work with shoes. I don't want to deal with people's shoes. And I said, okay, so let's follow that up. I said, is it that if they paid you enough, would you deal with shoes? Or you just like, shoes are off the table? She said, shoes are off the table. I said, okay, great. So now we need to put a disclaimer on your services that says shoes not included.
Yeah. It's the Imelda Marcos clause.
Right,
you know,
right. I'm going to tell her that. I think she'll love that.
If anyone's old enough to remember that.
I know, I remember.
Yes. So just, you could put that'd be awesome. But yeah, it really is that. I don't think, and that's another thing, when I don't work with startups very much. I mentor, the free part where I just give them that free advice and then run out the door.
Right.
Okay. Best luck to you. Because, and I tell people this often, I say, listen, it's not because I don't like them. I love it. I loved you wanted to do it. But for me to coach you, there's a few problems you have. First, you have no money. Okay. You have an idea. Okay. Right. You haven't lost. You have to you have no, I call it scars. You don't have any scars. You got to get scarred. You got to get beat up. You got to get punched in the face. Okay. That's how it works. Then when you get to that point, it might be in 2 years. You come to me now, when I tell you I can help you and I tell you how much, you'll go, that's worth it, because I've lost this much just trying to do this on my own or whatever. You know what I mean? But we can all attach value to something when we have experience in it. When we don't, it's you can't attach value to it. It's like someone.
Well, and they don't listen anyway. I mean, that's
exactly. Well, yeah, you said the important part. Okay.
They don't, I mean, that's why I don't work with startups. They don't listen. I literally, I tell them, I said, I find it so interesting that you come to me and you ask me for advice. You ask me for my perspective. I said, and to me, it's like climbing Mount Everest. You've never been there. I've been there several times and I've survived. You're coming, you don't have the right clothes, you don't have the right shoes, you don't have the right gear. I'm telling you, here's the shoes, here's the gear, this is the pace that we're going to go, because there's people who've been left up on that mountain. So I don't want you to be one of those. And you're like, nah, I'm good. And just start trekking up the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is what is, and you know what? There's this, I have a little appreciation for that, a little bit, because but my problem was I never listened to anybody for 20 years. And I had incredible advice being given me by very successful, massively. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't do what I do. So why would I take advice from you? That's your first mistake. Business is business.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're turning a wrench or like me placing boulders, making water features. It's all business. And that's the part you don't know.
Right. Right. And that's the piece of it. I always tell them, the mechanics are the same. Like the mechanics of a business are the same. I don't care if you're an underwater basket weaver or if you're Facebook. The mechanics of the business are the same. And to the point you made of, we've got to know what we're performing on a regular basis. And we have to know, do we need to improve that, or do we need to slow that down? Do we need more humans? Those are all mathematical equations, but it starts with that discipline. And I was like you, for a long time, I'm like, I don't need to track this stuff. I'm good. I know it in my head, right? I'm like, it's like, no, because memory is a evil thing, right? The brain is a powerful magician, and it will make you remember things that never happened.
Yep. It interprets improperly.
Exactly. Regularly. I just say it lies to you. I just call it, it's a liar. It's the biggest liar,
There's, as the Bible says, there's a wisdom in a multitude of counselors.
Yes.
And you need the viewpoints. You need I call them outside eyes. You
Right.
need people who have no emotional attachment to your business. You need to be asking them the questions, let them observe, because we'll bring you the truth
Right.
and we'll see it right away.
Right away.
You
And
know,
it's up
so
to you, like, but also know that, especially I think when you get to the level like where you and I, because we've had our own experience and we've counseled enough people, we can see the writing on the wall. We're like, I tell people, I'm going to say something. You can take it with a grain of salt or take bits and pieces of what you want and leave the rest behind. This is a suggestion, not a prescription. You get to decide, but also know that part of this has a predictable outcome.
right.
Right? I'm going to tell you a thing because all the work that I do when I do work with entrepreneurs, it's really on their back office. So I like to say it's their money, their operations, and their marketing. That's all I do. I don't talk to them about anything else. I don't talk about product design. That's not my ministry. I'm like, I will talk about, to your point, like the back office is the same. Whether I'm talking to a pastry business, whether I'm talking to a restaurant, the back office mechanics is the same. So once we do that, it's like, okay, I'm just telling you the science of a business. Yes, there's other organic parts to it. How you build relationships are going to be going to be different, whether you're a physical therapist or whether you're a baker. But the mechanics of like tracking those sales, finding out what your sales pitch is going to be, putting the deck together of what you're going to say every single time you talk to somebody, checking in with your financials, when you're going to review them, looking at the bank statement. Those are all things that are mechanics of a business that don't shift or change. So if you want to be on this ride with me, this is the level of discipline I'm requiring of you.
That's awesome. So let's talk about that for a minute, because what you just said, what you do, right, for businesses, like I don't, this isn't the first time I'm hearing about it, but I haven't heard it so concise with, like, I'm a very deliberate. There's basically three places I'm working here going to get you dialed in, because these are the mechanics. I like that term, right, of this thing. So, and I'm just going to say, like, if that's what you do and people can hire you for that, bring you on there to do that, like, I'm just going to tell people they need to talk to you.
Okay.
Okay. Because I'm telling you, like, that stuff is a nightmare. Okay. When you're setting it up
Yeah.
yourself, you know
Yeah.
nothing. I mean, I'm telling you, the hours and hours you're going to waste and the frustration of not even knowing. I mean, and I don't care how much software is out there or anything else and how good and easy it is, it's not.
Well,
Okay.
and what I try to do is it is a lot. And so what I try to do is, let's get to the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just start with some like 2 or 3 indicators across each one of those things. Because also you're also talking about typically a group of people, going back to our example earlier, the postal worker, the stay-at-home mom. Like, this isn't just a language that they've been exposed to. So we're building a new muscle. It's like going to the gym. That first month at the gym, it's freaking hard. It's painful. You're like, I'm never coming back here. Right? But then you start seeing results. You start seeing your pants are a little, less snug. You start to see like, oh, this blouse fits a little bit differently, right? And you're like, oh, okay. So it's this muscle that we have to get started. It's an atrophied muscle, or maybe a muscle that never existed, and it just might be not your forte, right? So I started the show talking about I was a dancer. And what I find, this happens a lot with creatives, right? They're just so not attached to anything as it relates to that. They are the business. Their body is the business. Their voice is the business. Their fingers are the business. And so what then does that look like, or what does that mean? But the funny thing about this conversation, and you saying like me honing in on this, it actually came out of my impact investing and social finance work. I saw this theme of, this is where the deals fell apart, is because the investment that we wanted to invest didn't have those 3 mechanics put together. So I'm like, okay, well, let me see if I can help get people to the finish line of a deal. That's literally how it started, was just like, I want to close this deal, or I want to make this happen. I want to get this project closed. Well, in order to make this project close, I'm going to have to offer this group or this organization or this business this support. And so that was literally the snowball of like, I said, oh, I need to work on both sides of the money equation. I got to work with the people who have the money to actually get them to think a little bit different and get them to be patient and make them understand that this group of people just have never been exposed to that and they can learn it. But somebody has to take the time to teach them, but also that this group needs to learn the language of the finance people. I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you when they say this, this is what it means, right? Because they've never been exposed to that language either. So I work with people on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, that's really, I find it so interesting because there's a couple, and that's like your starting point. Okay. So when people are hearing this, like you're saying, okay, I'll help them do that, but I'm going to encourage them. If you start there, what that's going to do, you're going to start to understand your numbers, understand the importance of them, track, see, have this, not only to gain capital, but there's going to be a time where you're going to reach that point and go, it's time to sell. And now you got to get a valuation for this business. And if you didn't begin where you started and continue that mindset of systemization, process, everything else, self-running, if you do follow all that, you're going to have something that someone actually wants to pay you for. And 100%. They might even want to pay you what you want for it.
100%. I tell this to the founders all the time. I said, plan for an exit. Even if you think you're going to pass this business down to your kids, to whomever, plan for an exit. And you should start thinking about one of the first questions I ask the founders that I work with. So we do have a capital readiness accelerator and we have a startup accelerator that we run. And the first question I asked them, I said, what's the life that this business is supposed to design? Because actually people don't start a business to start a business. They start a business for what they think the business is going to do for them. So and almost invariably, 98% of the time, people say, I've never thought about it, and or no one's ever asked me that question. And they're dumbfounded because they're like, oh yeah. And I said, okay, we need to document that because that's the thing that you need to hold on to when this stuff gets really difficult, when it gets really hard. But also, what does success look like? That's the second question that I ask, because it's not so much to your point that now it's time to sell the business. I like to use it as a marker to look up, right? It's going back to what you were talking about earlier. You're just like grinding. You need a marker that tells you to look up. And when you look up, it's not to say that this is the time to business, but it's the time to ask the question. Right. Do I still want to keep doing this? Do I want to sell? Do I want to sunset? Do I want to sell it to my employees? Like, what does success look like? Is it a $10 million business? Is this a lifestyle business but you want to live in a different country every month? Like, what does it look like? And then we can build that business. We can build the business. Every business shouldn't be a 10, 20, 50, $100 million business. What's the business you want? And I will help you create that business. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I do the same thing. So I talk every client I work with, we talk about exit strategy. Now, if you're brand new and you're going to launch a business, I tell them that's the best time to do your exit strategy.
100. I believe I'm with you.
Before you start, how long, how much, right? I break real simple. How long do you want to do this for and how much you want to get out?
I love that. I'm going to borrow that.
And then just reverse engineer that. So when you're going to hire your first person, this and the whole process, I also tell them it becomes an incredible business filter.
Right.
Meaning when someone waves the little idea fairy comes floating by and has some opportunity that has nothing to do with what you do, but you think you're going to go make money because now you're the super entrepreneur. Okay. You got to run it through your exit strategy. Yes. If it gets you closer to the exit, I'm in. Yes. If it takes me away, it's a hard no. So
I love that.
Keeps you really focused on the main thing. And obviously that's a very high view, but we always want to build a business to sell. I'm air quoting sell, right? Because it means it runs itself.
It runs itself and you can go vacation. Going back to that, what's the life that this is supposed to design? So if you are building the business with an exit strategy in mind, right? Even if you don't plan to sell, but it's getting you to the life that you're trying to design, right? The life that you were trying to live. Is it spending time with the grandkids? Is it, I want to live 6 months in Florida and 6 months in Minnesota? Like whatever that is, let's build the business. And to your point, the other thing that I like to talk about is when I started my business thinking about, I was a 50 employee I had 50 employees. So what that looks like is, even though I only had one employee, I operated like I had 50.
Mhm.
So an example of that is when I hired interns, every intern got an offer letter. So when I hired my first employee, guess what? I didn't have to create an offer letter because I already had an offer letter,
Right.
right? I was systematizing from day one. I'm like, what are the things that I'm repeating? Let me record that. And then let me oh, I talk about the company, right? What's our mission? What's our vision? I said, let me record that. Now I never have to do that again for any new
Yep.
employee coming on board. They can watch that video. And now I've gotten a half an hour back in my day and multiply that half an hour by every new employee. But this is the thing, but going back to how we started with hustle culture, what I find is founders think that if they do that, then they're not working in the business.
Right.
They think like, well, then I'm not working. I'm like, isn't that the point?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are. You just don't. I call it. You got to focus on your 5%.
Right,
Your 5% is the 5% of the business only you can do.
right.
Anybody can send an invoice. Anyone can close a sale. Okay, like all this other stuff. You really look at your business, you're like, well, I guess I could work anywhere and do all those things too. I could be hired as that, this, that. But here's the good news: anyone you hire is going to be way better than you. Okay, so
Say it again.
that's
Say it again.
they can't get the ego past like
That
you
part.
hire experts. I'm going to
Let
hire,
them
yeah,
let them
you
be
know,
experts.
yeah. Like I want you great. I don't want some mediocre person on my team. I need greatness. Everyone I'm going to bring on is going to be great, and you better be. If I can outdo you in accounting, I have made a really bad hire.
That
Okay,
part.
because like and it's a pretty low bar. Okay,
Right.
to be
We
better than me. So I'm just saying,
we have a sign that's in our office that says, be great when no one's looking.
love it, love it. That's what that's. And like you said, when you empower them, I have some other really successful entrepreneur friends, and they said simple things like we would pay them for minimizing mouse clicks. Like, how do you figure out why are we doing this 4 times? Can you get it down to 3? And they do that and they get a bonus. And they just start because they're in it every day.
Well, and
Just
here's the other one that I like to say to my team. I say, I don't pay you to struggle. And so what that turns into, I say, if you were spending more than 30 minutes on something, then you're probably not the right person to be working on it.
right,
So I'd rather pay more money to get it done more efficiently. So let's say you're a $50 an hour employee. Let's get a $75 an hour employee because it's going to take them 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And now you've already spent a half an hour. So I don't pay you to struggle. So, you know, if you spend half an hour on it, move on. You need to let me know. You need to let your supervisor know. Let's get somebody else in here who knows how to do what the thing is, because you have more important things to do also, right? What's your 5%?
yeah, exactly. The other to a caveat to that too is a lot of business owners have not built the lane out properly for them to succeed.
Right,
That so when they are struggling, it doesn't necessarily mean they're incompetent or don't
right,
know how to do it. You have put, I don't even call it a roadblock; it's a wall
right.
because they don't. You're expecting them to make it up. Like you went in, Elaine, and you like created this stuff. That ended up being like a gift for you, but you don't hire employees are not doing that what you did.
Oh,
So that
no.
was a your unicorn in that sense, right? Because they don't want to come to work to create your business. They want to come and do
Yeah.
what they do, but they
Yeah.
need to know. I always told them they need to know how to succeed on the day, the week, the month, the quarter, and the year.
Yes.
How do
Yes.
they win every day?
Yes.
If you don't build it so they can win every day, nobody's staying.
Yes.
I mean, you're
And
going to
that's
have
something I've
turnover like a
struggled with. Yeah, no, that they're so true. And that's something that I've struggled with and of it's a big lesson that I've had to learn as a business owner.
Mhm.
Of even scaling, like even to the point of not telling your staff your complete vision, right? I've learned that like you can't tell like they're executors. They just want to know what's the next thing they need to execute. And that was a hard, I went through a lot of employees before I learned that lesson that I'm like,
Right,
oh, I'm freaking them out. Like I can't tell them about like the plan 10 years from now. I need to tell
right.
them what they need to do today and this week.
Yep, yep. Yeah, we do. I do a thing called strategic vision, and I do write it out. That's my job, and it's 10. Mine's 14 pages, but it has pictures. Okay, so it's very readable.
Mine is
But
one page.
but but so what mine does though is it takes each position
Yeah.
It shows them where they're the hero in this journey and why it's so
Mm,
critical they're there and why it shows them true purpose. And this
I
is
love
a
that.
future cast of 18 to 24 months. So we're only looking to achieve that. We're not doing it now. We're going to do it. So we have lanes built out. We know what we're doing, but here's where we want to go. And if everybody knows where we want to go, we can all go there as a team and everyone feels like if I don't go today, like they can't achieve the strategic vision. If I do have to let someone go for a competency issue or
Right.
multiple, it's not because they're incompetent. I tell them it's because you're not fulfilling the strategic vision.
Right.
And we're all on a
Right.
mission. We're all on this vision. We're all on this drive. And I
Right.
have clients who have achieved their strategic vision and wrote new ones because
Right.
every 18, 24 months they get it. Well, now what? I go, now write another one.
Write another one. You got to do
Let's
another
go
one.
next level. Let's keep going. This is what we
I
do.
love
So
that. I might have to ask you to send me that if you're willing to share. And I think that is so important of I know for me, even when you talk about firing, so one of the reputations that I've gained is like people love how I fire them.
oh,
Like
you have to
I,
teach me.
I've
I'm known as the executioner.
I've been told like I'm the nicest firer. Like people love the way I fire. So and part of that for me goes back to just a human philosophy that I carry of
Mhm.
I never think that people should lose their dignity, right?
That's
So to
awesome.
your point though, it's like, hey, this isn't a culture fit. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person.
Mhm.
You're not a fit here for what we're trying to do. Your competency isn't where we need it to be to get the things done that we need to get done. That doesn't mean that you're dumb. That doesn't mean that you're stupid. And we try to have some kind of bridge, right? So I've had people where I'm like, hey, the job that you're doing is actually not aligned with your skills. And I'm happy to sit down with you and like have a conversation after this to help figure out what is the optimal job for you. Like, how does your brain work? And let's get you a job and a work culture that actually aligns with that. And here's how you recognize that. So to your point earlier, how do you right swipe and left swipe on opportunities? So by doing that, it's like, listen, this is, and it doesn't have, this is nothing to do, this isn't personal. At least for me, it's not. I think
Right.
sometimes people take it
Right.
personally, but I'm like, this isn't personal. I'm like, I'm the CEO. I got to make sure people get paid and I got to make sure people don't quit. And you're impacting one or both of those. So you can't be here, but let's go find the place where you need to be. And here are all the wonderful things about you. And so let's go find where your next spot is going to be. And I'm happy to make a phone call. I'm happy to make an introduction. And here's the things, these are the competencies that you might want to beef up on because you're going to need this in any job that you go into.
There's after we get done with the show, I'm going to share with you a really incredible tool that'll make that even easier from the hiring standpoint. I'm not rolling it out yet because I have the episode hasn't come out yet.
Okay. I
So
love
it's
it.
really cool. You're going to love it. And I'm going to share that with you after. So
I appreciate
sorry,
that.
everybody, got to wait and watch the episode later, but it's because you'll love it. So it's really amazing. So, but yeah, you're exactly right. And this is, again, these are back to things about a business and retention,
Right.
like is critical. I consulted for a very large company that I'm not going to mention, but they're in the first 3 years of the one particular large location being open, they had a 565% turnover in employees. You think something's broken?
I
You
was
think
going
so?
to say, what was the problem? I'm fascinated now.
I,
That's
I don't know,
like,
but
do
I
you know, like
fixed it. I
you have
fixed
to,
it in like 2 months.
like, do you have, like, just think about that. Like, that means one job is being, five people are being hired in a year for the same role. I just think
Mhm.
about the money that's flying out the door.
Mhm. Yep. When you hire people with just a pulse, that's going to happen.
Right.
When you
Facts.
don't have, and I'll give another example of an industry that kind of does that, and that would be your fast food industry. They hire high school
Yes.
kids,
Yes.
entry
Yes.
level, and they hire seniors.
Right.
Then you know who's in the middle? Frustrated 40, 50-year-old managers yelling at people because they're dealing with kids and seniors who could give a rip. They're there to do something with their time and talk to people, right? So it's
Right.
like I go it's the model, it's how it
Right.
works. But that's why I kind of laugh when I see they keep wanting to raise the minimum wage. I'm like, to guys with no experience. But these kids, and they literally like just hire 25 people at a time.
Yeah.
Like you don't really have a process. And they say, do you want to work here? If you can mutter yes, you're in. Okay. You're carrying bags of food out to a car. Okay. So it's like, so,
But that's why some places like Chick-fil-A and like some other
mhm,
places are so different, right? Because you
exactly.
can keep doing that, but you're like, hey, you're being brought into a culture, you're being brought
Mhm,
into a community. And so that's why, I tell small businesses that onboarding is so important. And
mhm,
it's also a conversation I have to have with investors, right? Because I think sometimes investors are coming in with that venture capital model, but they're angel investors. And so I have to work with them around like, okay, so what are the values you want demonstrated in your wealth? What are the values you want demonstrated in your investment? And so, okay, if those are important values to you, then you have to understand what that means and when you're actually operationalizing that in a business, right? That means things are going to move a little slower for a little while, right? And so getting people, that's some of the other work that I do is around this values driven wealth and
mhm.
and really helping people understand the levers of money and how to like making meaningful levers, making meaningful change or meaningful impact with the money that they have, especially if they're going to be investing in a small business.
Yeah, that's really, and I don't know, I don't have any real data on this, but I am pretty sure those kind of questions are not discussed in these areas that you're talking about, right? I mean, this is a whole, and it's the slowing down part that's important, but it's discussing these things because I'm a big value guy. Personal values, value driven business. I mean,
Mhm.
everything's about that. Because I asked people, I said, well, if you want to be the low bidder, then I can't help you. You need to find someone else. Okay,
Right,
because I don't even go to Walmart. Okay, like
right,
it's just devoid of humanity. Okay, I don't like it, so I don't go there. I am a high value driven coach to businesses, so you can maximize your profit, charge it, and serve the best of the best customers.
right.
Because that it's such a beautiful package when you operate at that level. You're
Yeah,
just happy, just like your investors do. When they understand the value and they see these businesses grow and they see that retention stay, because man,
right.
turnover is so costly.
It's so
I
costly.
mean,
It's
at every level, it doesn't matter if you have 5 employees or 5,000. Okay,
well, look what's happening with our government right now.
right. Like you look at it, like it's insane.
I
So
think we're up to $40 billion from the people who've been like laid off and then or terminated and then brought back to work.
yeah, it's just insanity. The whole thing is it's hard to sit here and think about it. I just get angry. But it's just but for us we need to slow down this hiring process, like the thing I'm going to tell you after we get done. You'll see that this changes the game. It literally does, so that you're getting the right people from the beginning,
I love
right?
that. I
That's
can't
the
wait. I'm super
challenge,
excited.
right? It's the challenge. Like everyone is there to get a paycheck. Like they're knocking on your door. Can I work here so I can make some money? That's like the bare bones of what they're thinking. I need a
Right,
job to make money to pay my rent. Okay. Well, that you and the 30, 300 million other people, they all want to do it, but that doesn't mean you can work here.
right.
Okay. That's not enough motivation. Okay. It's not enough. It doesn't, you might fit, you might not. We don't know. So you need that process. So, really amazing.
I love
Elaine,
that.
I got to tell you, I knew this was going to be good, but it's way beyond good. This is a great
Oh,
conversation. This is really, really great. And I know everyone's getting a lot of takeaways from this. Obviously, when you're starting to think this way, and this is not, here's what I like about it. It's not like I've never heard this stuff before. You've heard bits and pieces. No one puts this stuff together into a business, right? So I don't know if you see this out there too. They take that one little thing and they try to implement a little thing that ends up dying on the vine because the vine isn't connected to the soil,
right,
right? So they're trying to take a tomato and tape it to a vine.
right,
Well, it's not going to grow. Okay, like it doesn't work that way. You got to plant, and then
right.
from there you grow. So, and that's my point. So I think you've really put this together well. So last thing to talk about here is how do people get in touch with you? What do you actually offer? I know you've got different events you do and things like that. So
Yeah.
let's kind of
I
Tell
think the
people what's
best,
what.
yeah, the best place, there's two good places to catch me. So definitely I've got my podcast and we'll have to have you on my podcast of Do
Yes.
Different Better. You can find that on YouTube on my channel, but also my link tree, it's going to keep you updated. So my link tree is Do Different Better as well. And so that's going to have any workshops that I've got coming up, any events that are coming up, the latest episode of my show, and any other crazy things that I'm doing.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And I, I always encourage the listeners, like you need to take, if this, any of this is resonating with you, just take that action.
Yes.
Connect first, just go subscribe or connect, whatever you got to do. So and then get back on with your day. You don't have time to like fill out 9 forms. Not that you have 9 forms, but some people do. And it's too many. I'm just a
It
word of
is too
advice,
many.
way too many forms. So, so, but then come back to it and go, okay, what's my first thing? Let's start with knowledge.
Yes.
Give me the info, right? Let me, we got the whole thing. So just begin that process and start walking down this road, especially if you're newer in business or say you're at that 3, 4, 5 year mark and you still don't have that back office stuff like you talked about dialed in. You're still kind of hustling. You're still praying on Wednesday. You're going to make payroll on Friday and all that kind of stuff. We like, I love prayer, but not like that every week. Okay. So
But even prayer, even the Bible says prayer without action is
that's right.
nothing,
That's
right?
right.
So
Yes,
yeah,
God will not guide your steps till you start taking them.
that's right.
Okay. So you gotta know that for sure. So exactly right. So, but yeah, I love it. So just get connected here with Elaine, move forward with this stuff and really start to improve your business from the inside.
Absolutely. If
Okay.
you
The
want to talk
inside
about
back.
values-based wealth, if you want to talk about impact investing, if you want to talk about growing your business because you're in that 3 to 10 year period, I'm your lady. So I would love to have you reach out and DM me. I've got lots of tools that I'm going to be creating, so those will be available as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic, Elaine. Like I said, as I knew it would be, exceeded expectations. So that's awesome. And for everybody else, we'll see you on the next STS podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Sharpen the Spear podcast. If today's episode helped you think sharper, act smarter, or see new profit potential, do me a favor. Share it with a fellow home service owner and leave a quick review. Ready to find the profit hiding in your business? Head to sharpenthespearcoaching.com and book your free profit discovery call today. And until next time, keep sharpening.